Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. So today I played a game of the Vienna Gambit where the opponent declined the gambit with knight to c6. And usually that's immediately good for white. But what was really interesting in this game is a line that Stockfish found when I was doing the analysis from move 10. This amazing Stockfish line involves 3-piece sacrifices, where 2 of those sacrifices are brilliancies. Let's have a look. So the Vienna Gambit, of course, starts with e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, and then immediately f4, potentially placing pressure here. And the opponent opted, as I said, to decline with knight to c6. Now, in the knight to c6 decline of the Vienna Gambit, it is immediately bad for black. White is almost +2. And we'll see in the opening that it is, if you know this line, but it is very devastating, immediately capturing that pawn. So now threatening that knight basically has to capture now the pawn back on e5, but now we can push our other central pawn, d4, again attacking the knight. Knight must move to only one of 2 positions. They're the only 2 positions which make sense. My opponent opted to move back to c6 and push the e-pawn again. So again, another attack on the knight on f6. And here, just to be clear, that knight has nowhere good to go on the board, as every single square is defended by my pieces. So my opponent hops back the knight to g8, undeveloping the knight. And the best move here for white is to develop the other knight. Firstly, there's development to f3, but also this prevents a queen to h4 with check, which can be quite a troublesome move in this opening. Opponent now plays bishop to b4, attacking the knight, and I thought, look, that's potentially okay. I'll capture back, and I still have this very strong center of pawns. So I ignored it, and I played bishop c4. They did, in fact, capture, and I captured back. And now they played h6, bit of a waiting move, and maybe also preventing ostensibly that move as well. And my next move was short castles. And short castles was actually, quite a good move. But look at this interesting line from the engine, from Stockfish. Bishop captures pawn on f7, seemingly a pawn sacrifice. Why? Well, let's explore this very, very lovely line. So, bishop captures pawn on f7 is in fact the best move. And here, the king is forced to capture back. Firstly, the king is now stuck on this side of the board, no longer able to castle. Now we've got short castles, and any move now by the knight will be a discovered check. And even worse, if I play knight to g5, that would be a double check. So king must move this turn. And the best move, in fact, moving the king back to e8, back to its square. And savagery. Knight g5 anyway, a brilliant move, allowing for the knight sacrifice. And why? Well, one of the things that happened when the bishop captured the pawn on f7 is that this file is now completely open. And the knight moving out of that square, forcing that capture, basically allows the queen to take its place, forming a battery, and in fact, either of these squares would be mate in one next turn. So the opponent is in some real trouble. And in fact, there's only really one sort of logical move here, which is queen to e7, defending both of those squares. But now another savage move by the engine. Bishop captures pawn on g5. Again, another brilliant move because the opponent cannot capture that bishop. That bishop isn't going to take that queen because if the queen captures the bishop, again, here would be mate in one. And if we look at the lines, basically the only good moves for black is to allow that capture. And in fact, the opponent is still in a very, very bad position afterwards with, probably, going to be caught up in a mating net soon afterwards. So an absolutely brilliant, wonderful line, which I didn't see in the actual game. Now, as I said, in the game, I played short castles here, which was still potentially okay. And let's have a quick look actually at the review here. And one of the things to take note of in this line where the opponent declines a Vienna Gambit with knight c6 is that it's easy to capture a lead in the opening, but the middle game is actually really complex. And as you can see, I actually lose almost all my advantage in the middle game. Did manage to capture a win with a trick afterwards, and we'll see that, but it is a difficult line to play potentially. So moving back, so what actually happened from this point onwards? So opponent played d6, which I suppose made some sense, so, it wasn't good for them. I now made a mistake here. So Stockfish, of course, can see that move. I thought I would play more defensively, bishop e3, and that didn't work. You can see I lose a lot of my advantage. They play a knight move, which again was an error for them. It's a difficult, complicated position. I thought d5 was potentially okay, but apparently not the case. They play knight a5, which was a good move. I give a check. Opponent blocks check with bishop. We trade bishops. I thought this was potentially fine for me, and it's practically now back down to equality. So this is where a lot of the advantage with the Vienna Gambit in this line is with the tricks, with the traps. And if you're not aggressive and you don't push it, potentially it's a problem. Now here I did see a trap that I was trying to line up because I saw, look, if I could push that pawn forward, now that obviously gives an attack on that queen, but of course it doesn't work at the moment because that pawn is obviously just going to straight up capture. So I thought if I move my knight out of the way somewhere, then I could capture with the rook. Looks like it's like a rook sack. If king captures back, then that would be a very lovely fork. So that was sort of some of the planning that I had here. I thought maybe I would sort of line this up just to weaken that pawn first. That apparently actually makes things worse. That doesn't achieve very much. And here I move the knight out of the way. Apparently a blunder. Very interesting. However, the opponent blunders right back. It's a complicated position. And here I do my rook sack. It's not too bad. Equality. I thought I was being pretty clever here. Opponent captures that bishop. That's okay. If they don't take the rook, my queen can get into position. Now that rook is defended. And more than that, I saw that that would potentially be really powerful, given that that knight at the moment is pinned to the queen. We want to place pressure on the pinned piece. They probably wasted a move there. And you can see sort of Stockfish reckons that a queen trade is the best for black at the moment. And now they allow me to play knight g6, another piece attacking that knight. That knight can't move out of the way. Otherwise, of course, the queen is hanging. They play a move because that knight seemingly was also attacking that rook. And here, actually, I had a mate in two, which I didn't see, which was here, forced move, mate. I didn't see that in the actual game. I was very much focused on the strategy here with that pinned knight, and so captured that knight with the rook, which now, of course, forks the king and queen. Queen must capture, knight captures back, they capture, and I capture their knight, and now we enter the end game. Two rooks versus rook and queen. I basically should be winning here. So there's a little bit of shuffling. They place their rook there, so I offer a trade. Excellent trade, that's good. Now, queen versus rook, pretty good for me. A little bit of shuffling, trying to work out how to move things. Pushing the pawn allowed me to push their rook back. And here it was a matter of positioning. And my goal was to try to eventually fork the king and the rook, which I found in this position. So king must move out of the way. Rook is lost next turn. completely lost then, and here my opponent opted to resign. Good game, GG. There are two big takeaways from this game. One, a strategy in the Vienna Gambit is to rapidly place overwhelming pressure down the F-file. And two, review your game with an engine to help improve your knowledge. I hope you found this video interesting, and thanks for watching.